Hello and welcome to AutoCAD tutorial number 2. Today it is going to be led by Joshua and Gabby, and there are several things we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about CTBs, uh, using your layer manager, setting up drawings in Paperspace, how to use a viewport, setting up your viewports to scale, and printing in PDF. So the first thing we need to do is talk about CTBs. A CTB is a color-based plot style, which means certain colors, which you will see later, will be attached to certain line weights. And so we are giving you three styles from our construction class. It's going to be LA light, LA medium, and LA heavy. So to get to these plot styles, we are going to go to Plotter Manager and hit space or enter. A new window is going to come up, and then you want to double click Plot Styles. And as you can see, I already have a couple here, but the ones you will be downloading off of, like, I guess Blackboard will be available to you. And so after you download those styles, once this window is open, all you have to do is take the files you downloaded and drag and drop. And now they are in there, ready for you to use. A CTB, I'll show you right now, so then the next section makes more sense. So a CTB, like I said, attaches certain colors to certain line weights. So for this demonstration, I'll be using LA medium. And when I click this symbol up here and go to table view, you will see that there are 6 colors, all with their own different line weight. And what you'll notice is these line weights go from thinnest, which is 0.05 millimeters, all the way up to 0.35 millimeters. And that'll be really important for when we go into our layer manager. So now let's talk about layers. Layers are your best friend. Good layer management is the key to really good drawings. And if you have really good layer management, you will never be lost in any of your drawings. Here's an example of what we did last semester. This is E&D Plaza. And as you can see, there are just a ton of layers. So practice good layer management right now. I'll tell you that much. So we're going to go here, and this is your layers manager. There are several ways you can get to it. The first one is up here, but my favorite way to access layers is just to type in command, layer, enter, and your entire property manager comes up. There are several buttons you need to know about in the layer manager. The first three are up here. Like, they look like stacks of paper with different symbols next to them. The one with the orange symbol will create a new layer, or you could do Alt-N. The one with the red X will delete a layer, you could do Alt-D. Or this will set current layer for Alt-C. Some other important things to note in here are the freeze, which is basically your hide and unhide layer, your lock, your color, which we will be using. We will be using these index colors because of the CTB we just uploaded. Line type, there are different types of line types. There's solid, there is dots, double dash dots, S's, there's a lot of line types. And then we have line weight, which we shouldn't need to touch because of the CTB file, and transparency, plot styles, and stuff you don't really need to know about at the end. So for this demonstration, I made a little drawing of a park. I have 3 trees, 4 benches, and a plot of land, or well, I guess it's grass. And when we are drawing in plan view, the things closest to the viewer will be thicker. So since my trees are higher up, these will be the thickest, and then the benches will be the second thickest, and then the grass will be the thinnest line. So now we're going to go layer, and we're going to add 3 layers to represent each item. And to rename a layer, you could click it once, it will let you rename, or you could press F2 and let you rename, or you could right click and go to rename layer. So now I'm going to name these trees. I'm going to name this one benches, and we're going to name this one grass. And if you remember the CTB file we just uploaded, we know that the index colors from left to right will go from thinnest to thickest. So for right now, since trees are the highest thing in this plan drawing, I'm going to set it to magenta, which should be the thickest line weight. And then from there, I'm going to go down because they should be thinner the closer you get to the ground. But as you can see, my drawing hasn't changed colors. So what you can do is you could set, let's start with the trees, you could set to the current layer, which is your tree layer, and I want to add this tree to that layer. You could do one of 3 things. The first option is go up here into this layer cell, and you're going to click on the drop down, and then you're going to set it to trees, and it changed colors, which is great. The second option is to highlight this tree, and then you're going to type in PR, which is short for properties. And a new menu is going to come up, but all you have to do is look for the layer and change it to trees. And the last way, the shortcut is MA, which is match property. And so we're going to choose a source object, and then now we could change the last tree into the tree layer. And now I'm just going to do the rest of these. Perfect. And now that each of these items are in their respective layer, we could turn them off, we could lock them, can't touch them, and now we are ready to move to our paper space. So at the lower left here, you'll see model and probably 2 layouts. We're going to go to layout 1, and by default, the paper size is already set to 8.5 by 11, but if you want to, you could type in page setup, and from here you could create your own. So for example purposes, I'll name this one 11 by 17. And now you could change whatever you want, like you could go straight to PDF or OneNote or whatever you want, but just make sure you change your paper size to the correct size. So for example, I chose 11 by 17, and a bunch will come up, but for this purpose, I will be using ANSI B. And then we'll press OK. And then to set the new setup into paper space, you will double click. And now the page is set to 11 by 17. But I need to have it at 8.5 by 11. So as you can see, there's nothing on this paper space. In order for something to come up, by default, your viewport should already be here. It's this little white square. But if it is not, you could type in mview, press enter, and you could specify a corner. You could click and click again, and your viewport will be there. So now, what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna add another layer. So bring up Layer Manager again, and we're gonna add one more. This will be known as viewport. The reason we have a viewport layer is for this button right here. When you click this button, it will not print the border around your drawing. It will only print your actual model in the viewport. Just don't forget to set it to your viewport layer. To use the viewport, there are several things you could do within it. So if you click it, you could type in M for move, and you can move it around. You could rescale it with these corners to fit however you want it to fit within this paper. You could copy it. You could do Control C, Control V, and the new viewport will show up. You could erase it. You could do whatever you want with these viewports. If you want to work it within the viewport into model, you're going to double click into your viewport. And now, as you can see, I am working in model space. And from here, you could do several things. You could modify your model, obviously, but the most important thing from here is down here, is your scale. So you could change the scale of where this drawing sits. So for example, I'm going to set it to quarter scale, and the drawing will move, and on 8.5 by 11, this will be at quarter scale. So working with scale, at quarter scale, 1 inch equals 4 feet, which means on a 8.5 by 11 sheet, you have 44 feet longwise by 34 feet widthwise. To give you a reference, I made this model at, I believe it's 40 feet. Yeah, so it's 40 feet by 20 feet. So this should barely fit on an 8.5 by 11, in which it does. I don't want to go too much into scale, but just know that when you click on a viewport, a bunch of scales will come up. Like this is 1/8, and so on and so forth. But I'm going to put it back at quarter. So now you're ready to print this page, like it's ready to go. So what your command is going to be is plot. So you're going to do plot, enter. I will continue to plot a single sheet. Make sure your CTB is the correct CTB you want to use. In this case, it will be LA medium. Make sure your paper size is correct. I have it set to 8.5 by 11. And for this document, I'm going to use AutoCAD PDF, the general documentation. One more really important thing to know about this plot menu is this plot area. You could choose to do a window, an extent, or a display. I mainly use layout or window. Window is really helpful because you get to choose just what you want. And then before you actually print, it's always super important that you preview it or do a test plot. So when you preview it, you could see that our line weights are in fact working. The trees are thick as it should be. Maybe we could go a little lower on the bench, and I think the line weight on the grass is fine. It's really important you do a preview because you could go back and choose a different line weight. Like for example, I think the benches could be a tad thinner, so I'm going to change it from cyan to green. And now we're going to go back to plot, continue plot single sheet, and make sure you set it to AutoCAD PDF and hit preview. Always check. Always check. I think that reads a lot better. It's not as thick as the tree, but it's not too thin where it blends in with the grass. And when you are happy with how your drawing is going to print, you could press OK. You could save it as a PDF, or you could directly print to your printer from here. And that is the end of tutorial number 2.